President Cyril Ramaphosa is moving quickly to shield South Africa from the shockwaves of renewed U.S. tariffs that threaten exports, jobs, and economic stability. Instead of waiting for the fallout, he is turning to China and Japan, seeking stronger partnerships that could provide markets, investment, and a counterweight to Washington's protectionism. With China as Africa's biggest trading partner and Japan expanding its influence, Ramaphosa hopes to position South Africa as more than a victim of global disputes. He wants it seen as a strategic player shaping its own alliances in a volatile world. President Cyril Ramaphosa has once again found himself navigating a turbulent global landscape, with South Africa caught between economic uncertainty and diplomacy. The latest twist comes in the wake of renewed U.S. tariffs that have sent ripples across international markets, deepening global trade tensions and straining developing economies like South Africa. Rather than wait, Ramaphosa has moved swiftly to court global allies, turning to China and Japan in a bid to strengthen ties, secure markets, and build a buffer against volatility brought on by Washington's protectionist stance. His outreach signals more than just a search for partners, it is a declaration that South Africa will not sit idly by while powerful economies set the rules of the game. Ramaphosa's overtures to Beijing and Tokyo reflect a pragmatic strategy. China remains Africa's largest trading partner and has invested billions in infrastructure, energy, and technology across the continent. Japan, meanwhile, has steadily expanded its footprint in Africa through investment summits and development programs, positioning itself as a stable partner in energy and industry. By reaching out to both, Ramaphosa seeks new opportunities and aims to reshape the narrative. Africa is not a bystander but a player capable of choosing its alliances. The U.S. tariffs, which have drawn global criticism, have reignited concerns that America is pulling further into protectionism, leaving allies and rivals scrambling. For South Africa, these tariffs threaten to shrink export opportunities, raise import costs, and destabilize fragile supply chains. Steel, aluminum, and agricultural exports face setbacks, while industries relying on imports could see rising costs. Ramaphosa's decision to seek closer ties with China and Japan is therefore as much about damage control as long-term strategy. But courting Beijing and Tokyo is not without challenges. China's growing influence in Africa has raised questions about debt dependency, sovereignty, and whether African governments can negotiate partnerships that benefit their people as much as Chinese companies. Japan, less controversial, prefers gradual, calculated investments over sweeping deals. Ramaphosa's challenge lies in convincing both that South Africa is not only a gateway to the continent but also a reliable partner capable of delivering stability, innovation, and returns. Domestically, this diplomatic outreach comes at a critical time. South Africa faces sluggish growth, high unemployment, and frustration over corruption and poor services. Critics argue foreign deals bring headlines but fail to fix deeper structural issues. Yet for Ramaphosa, building international partnerships is part of a vision to integrate South Africa into global value chains, attract investment that sparks job creation, and reduce dependence on volatile Western markets. By strengthening ties with Asia's economic giants, he hopes to position South Africa as a bridge between Africa and the East, a nation that can mediate, trade, and grow even as the West and East clash. The symbolism is striking. Ramaphosa's courtship of China and Japan during U.S. protectionism underscores a realignment of global power. Many nations are no longer content to depend solely on Washington or Brussels for trade and finance. Instead, they pursue multipolar strategies, forging ties across continents to avoid over-reliance on any single partner. With its location, BRICS membership, and AU influence, South Africa sees itself as positioned to benefit from this shifting order. Ramaphosa's diplomacy is a gamble that Africa's future will be shaped not by dependency on one superpower but by a balanced network of alliances that give it greater leverage on the world stage. The stakes are high. Failure to secure commitments from China and Japan could leave South Africa vulnerable to the fallout of U.S. tariffs. Success could provide the momentum Ramaphosa needs as he struggles to convince South Africans his leadership can deliver. The economy has been stagnant for years, weighed down by energy crises, logistical hurdles, and declining investor confidence. A breakthrough deal with Beijing or Tokyo, whether in infrastructure, energy, or technology, could be the spark that restores confidence at home and abroad. Yet even as Ramaphosa courts Asia, he must tread carefully. Aligning too closely with China risks alienating the US, still one of South Africa's largest trading partners and a source of vital investment. Washington has already signaled unease with African nations' growing ties to Beijing, and Ramaphosa will have to reassure America that his diplomacy is diversification, not replacement. With Japan, the challenge will be to move beyond aid and development rhetoric into tangible, large-scale trade and investment agreements. Observers note Ramaphosa's diplomacy is deliberate, avoiding provocation while building ties. This balancing act is not easy in a world where tensions between the US and China dominate, but it reflects South Africa's reality. The country cannot afford to alienate major partners. Instead, it must weave ties to maneuver when global powers collide. In this sense, Ramaphosa's strategy is as much about survival as ambition. For ordinary South Africans, the question is whether these high-level moves will translate into real improvements. Many are skeptical, pointing out that past promises of investment often fell flat or were mired in corruption. Others argue that problems like blackouts, poor governance, and collapsing infrastructure must be fixed domestically before partnerships can succeed. Ramaphosa's success depends on turning goodwill into visible progress citizens can feel. Still, his latest efforts to engage China and Japan mark a significant moment in foreign policy. It reflects a recognition that the country cannot afford to be a passive victim of trade wars, nor rely on one superpower. Instead, South Africa must carve its own path, assert interests, and choose partners to weather storms ahead. Whether Ramaphosa can deliver is uncertain, but the stakes are clear. South Africa's future in a fractured global economy may depend on how skillfully its president navigates the competing demands of Washington, Beijing, and Tokyo. This is why SA Unfiltered will continue to bring you the stories that matter, cutting through the noise to give you the truth behind the headlines. Ramaphosa's efforts to court China and Japan may shape the future of South Africa's economy, its role in global politics, and its ability to withstand US tariffs. These moves could determine whether the country remains vulnerable to global shifts or emerges as a resilient player in a volatile world. Don't miss the next chapter of this story. Hit that subscribe button right now, join our community, and stay with us as we unpack the events shaping South Africa's place on the world stage.